You're gonna start already, huh?
No, I'm not starting.
How are you?
I'm almost through.
Good to see you.
How'd all these people get in your room?
For a long time, he was the epitome of cool. His silken voice, charming smile, and innate grace captivated audiences. The famous alcoholic was a beloved comic who, behind closed doors, would fill his tumbler with apple cider. Behind the glamour of his Hollywood existence, though, rumors and speculations circulated about his family. But Dean was in excruciating pain. After years of keeping quiet, Dean Martin's children have spoken up. What new information did they uncover? How was Dean's life unfolding? See what information Dean Martin's children have shared about their father. Warning: I did not have a cool childhood. Dean Martin's upbringing was influenced by his parents' Italian ethnicity. Originally from Steubenville, Ohio, he was born Dino Crocetti on June 7, 2017. Dean was born to Italian parents and his father was a barber. His Italian-American mother was a homemaker and seamstress. The fact that Dean's mother tongue was Italian and he didn't learn English until he was 5 years old put him at a major disadvantage in school. Dean was teased at school because of his prominent Italian accent, despite his rapid language acquisition. He worked as a steel mill laborer after dropping out of high school. Before becoming a professional boxer and entertainer, the young man worked as a gas station attendant. He came out as Kid Crochet at the age of 15. Because he could not afford the tape that boxers used to wrap their hands, he battled prize fighting and suffered many broken knuckles, a scarred lip, a broken nose that had to be straightened, and bruises all over his body. With a mischievous grin, he boasted that out of his 12 battles, he had won 11. Given this history, how did Dean achieve the kind of fame and fan adoration that he now enjoys? We'll have to see. Dean Martin and Sonny King, a penniless guy also just starting out in show business, lived together for a short time in New York City before fame came knocking. Reportedly, the duo lured spectators inside their apartment to witness a bare-knuckle brawl that ended with one of them unconscious. A boxing match between amateurs ended with Martin knocking out King in the opening round. Many other illegal activities were also part of Dean's life, including selling lottery tickets, working as a bookie, smuggling booze across state borders during Prohibition, and dealing with money and cards at local casinos. Thankfully, though, someone heard Dean's voice, and soon he was performing in clubs around the country. Martin began his career in show business as a 17-year-old, performing at bars near his Ohio hometown. While he was performing with the Ernie McKay Band, Cleveland bandleader Sammy Watkins saw him and recruited him to be the main singer for the group. After using the name Dean Martin in 1939, he began traveling with Watkins in 1938. In September 1943, Martin secured an exclusive deal with MCA to play the Rio Bamba Room in New York. A 15-minute New York City-based radio show named Songs by Dean Martin was broadcasted live to him in 1994. His 4 singles released by Diamond Records in 1946 were the result of a recording contract he had obtained. When Dean was performing in Atlantic City, New Jersey, he met a funny man who would change his life. The meeting with Jerry Lewis transformed Dean's life. Together, they began making light of each other's performances in 1946. The famous comedian was one of them. Because of this, Lewis was able to play a youthful clown and Martin a sharp, straight guy, and the comedy team was a smashing hit. The duo made their television debut on the Colgate Comedy Hour following a 30-minute radio appearance on NBC's Daily Show. From My Friend Irma until Hollywood or Bust, the highly successful Martin and Lewis duo worked together on 16 films. Famous comedic pair Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin also had their own comic book series published by DC Comics titled The Adventures of Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. From 1952 until 1957, the series ran for 40 issues. After that, the team truly broke up. Therefore, the title was changed to The Adventures of Jerry Lewis. The dynamic duo of Martin and Lewis was exceptional in many ways. First of all, they were both quite talented. Their on-screen chemistry and camaraderie reached new heights thanks to their private relationship. The revolutionary comedic partnership of Martin and Lewis is hard to describe. According to Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin and he had a diverse fan base. Everyone liked Dean, Italians included. Jerry was able to win over female viewers, Jewish audiences, and young people. Lewis, nevertheless, noted that the fact that it made no difference who was performing anything on stage was the secret to their success. Martin and Lewis were still front and center, even if Dean was singing. Martin and Lewis would still be responsible if Jerry went insane. The fact that they worked together as a unit won them many admirers. At the Copacabana in New York, Martin and Lewis made their last performance together on July 24, 1956. 10 years into their relationship, they decided to part ways due to artistic differences. Fans of the famous comedy duo saw them as almost a married couple, according to biographical writer Neil Daniels. The abrupt nature of the split, which resembled a divorce in many ways, shocked many. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis were the highest-paid entertainers in Hollywood prior to their split. After a tumultuous breakup, the two stayed silent for 20 years. Many have speculated about what may have caused Martin and Lewis to abruptly end their relationship, but there were really several factors. The gap between the two comedians' views on work ethic is the most often cited cause. Many people say that Jerry Lewis is too dedicated to his job. He had an insatiable appetite for acting roles in movies, TV shows, and live performances. Dean worked very hard, but he did it with a more relaxed demeanor than others. Having been a scratch golfer in the past, Dean knew how important it was to make time for both his game and his family. Also, he was sick of seeing just romantic prospects. The general public saw Jerry Lewis as the show-stopping actor, while some saw Dean just as a supporting character. It was probably reinforced when, in 1954, Look magazine requested Martin and Lewis to grace its cover. Prior to the film's release, they removed Martin from it. Martin felt let down as the arguments between them escalated. Their capacity to work together eventually dried up. When Martin was furious, he once called Lewis a cash sign and shouted at him. Lewis would later convey his regret about the outcome. The fact that Lewis and his partner had not communicated for 20 years was a constant source of anguish for him. In what ways did Dean's solo career succeed? Was that the end of his career? It was precisely his solo debut. It was widely believed that Martin would struggle as a solo artist, yet after splitting up with Lewis, his career took off. The achievement of gold status was brought about by Dean's hit songs such as That's Amore, Memories Are Made of This, and Everybody Loves Somebody. At the same time, he debuted in the WW2 drama The Young Lions, co-starring Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift, continuing his acting career. He also published Volare that year, which was a hit as well. He first appeared on cinema in the 1958 film Some Came Running, co-starring Frank Sinatra. Also, Dean's performances in Rio Bravo, Airport, Toys in the Attic, and Bells Are Ringing garnered him accolades. Along with Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr., he co-starred in the heist film Ocean's 11, and he had roles in the musical comedies Robin and the Seven Hoods and Sergeants 3, two more Rat Pack features. A number of popular espionage parodies starring Martin, such as The Silencers, Murderers Row, The Ambushers, and The Wrecking Crew, ran from 1966 to 1968. As a single feature, Martin's 10,000 Bedrooms bombed at the box office. Volare reached number 2 in the UK and 15 in the US, but the pop crooner period came to a close with the birth of rock and roll. Martin would have preferred a somber role over a slapstick comedy if given the chance. Despite being paid a small percentage of his prior income, he declined a role in the 1948 military picture The Young Lions, which starred Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift. Talent agency MCA thought that Dean might become a triple threat with this picture, meaning they could benefit from his work in movies, music, and nightclubs instead of Tony Randall, who was originally cast in the part. After being paid off to step out from the role, Martin stepped in to replace Randall, and the film marked the beginning of Martin's comeback. Curiously, Martin honed his singing skills by mimicking the moves of the Mills brothers Harry Mills, Perry Como, and Bing Crosby. Eventually, he developed his own distinctive sound and competed in duets with Sinatra and Crosby. Even though he, like Sinatra, was illiterate, he recorded 600 songs and over 100 albums. The Beatles' A Hard Day's Night was beaten to the top spot in the U.S. by his smash tune Everybody Loves Somebody in 1964. Later that year, another song called The Door Is Still Open to My Heart made it to number 6. His final studio album, The Nashville Sessions, came out in 2016. The image of Martin as a dapper Las Vegas showman is always stuck. On Ain't That a Kick in the Head, Martin sang. In Ocean's 11, a song that wasn't popular when it was released, but has since become his most played single in the last 20 years due to its rebirth in popular culture and the media. For 30 years, Dean was one of Las Vegas's most beloved performers. He sang and was considered one of the most polished comedians because to his decade-long run-ins with Lewis. In addition to her work as a singer in Las Vegas and on other TV shows, Martin's daughter Gail co-hosted a show on NBC's summer replacement block. Richie Martin, the youngest son, and Deanna Martin, the daughter, both performed until his death in August of 2016. The oldest son, Craig, produced Martin's television program, while the daughter, Claudia, appeared in films such as For Those Who Think Young. Although Martin was widely believed to be promiscuous, he really prioritized spending time with his family. According to his second wife, Jean, who filed for a divorce from him, Martin was there for supper every night. With Sinatra and Shirley MacLaine in Some Came Running, Judy Holliday in Bells Are Ringing, John Wayne in Rio Bravo, Toys in the Attic, Airport, Cannonball Run, and Cannonball Run Part 2. Martin had a prolific acting career spanning 51 films. Is it true that Lewis and Martin made up? Lewis and Martin's story ended on a positive note, thankfully. For the Jerry Lewis Memorial Drive Labor Day Telethon, Frank Sinatra planned a touching surprise. The legendary Sinatra had introduced Dean Martin to Lewis in a private setting, saying, "I have a friend who adores the work you do annually." Sinatra was known for her telethon involvement. An incredible scenario unfolded as the former pals embraced and spoke to one another for the first time since breaking up in 1956. Martin and Lewis chatted every day after they reconnected in 1976. Deana Martin, who is the daughter of Dean Martin, has gone into additional detail about the friends' relationship following their reconciliation. In an attempt to keep Dean's name alive, Deanna has recently taken part in a number of interviews. Staying in touch was important to both of them. Fox News said that Deanna Martin thought Jerry would have liked to have been there after that, but that her father was already playing golf in his spare time. Jerry clearly adored her dad, she thought. Starting in 1965 and airing for 264 episodes, The Dean Martin Show was a weekly NBC comedy variety program that Martin hosted. His triumph for Best Actor in a Television Series, Musical, or Comedy brought him 16 additional nominations and a Golden Globe. His character, the carefree party animal, was utilized by the program. During his roasts, Martin made slurred but rapid comments about other celebrities, playing on his image of the half-drunk crooner and making advances toward ladies that would get anybody slapped. Possibly in jest, he said in an interview for the 1963 British TV documentary Wine, Women and Song that he had taped them so he could listen to them later. The TV program was quite popular. The informal format of the show allowed Martin and his weekly guests to display their quick wit through improvisation. Martin and the NBC censors got into an argument because of this, because the censors wanted to look at the content more closely. Later on, he caused trouble for NBC when he casually used vulgar Italian phrases, which irritated Italian speakers. Time and again, the show was named to the top 10. With a handshake deal, Martin and his friend Greg Garrison, a trailblazing TV producer from the 1950s, gave Garrison half of the show as a token of appreciation for all of his hard work. On the other hand, NBC Universal has challenged the legality of such ownership through a lawsuit. Martin continued his television career with the Dean Martin Comedy Hour, which ran from 1953 to 1974. An unforgettable part of Martin's TV act was his comic portrayal of life as an alcoholic lush, which many viewers didn't realize was an act. "I feel terrible for those who don't drink" is one of Martin's famously hilarious drinking-related quips. For them, the highlight of the day ends the moment they open their eyes in the morning. Did any other celebrities except Lewis share the spotlight with Dean? The Rat Pack didn't always have Frank Sinatra at the helm, despite popular belief to the contrary. The first leading man was Humphrey Bogart, an actor. Rumor has it that Bogart's wife, Lauren Bacall, coined the word when she began hosting late-night parties in the mid-1950s and began inviting famous people like Sinatra, Judy Garland, David Niven, and others. It was 1957, though, when Bogart and the original Rat Pack both died. Not in Hollywood or Las Vegas, but in a little town in Indiana called Madison, the new Rat Pack got its start. Sinatra, the newly minted film star Dean Martin, and the young actress Shirley MacLaine were all filmed there in 1958 for the film Some Came Running. Like the original Rat Pack, this new crew was heavy drinkers. Famous friends included Humphrey Bogart, Peter Lawford, Frank Sinatra, and Joey Bishop. The Rat Pack became famous over time, and the fact that they frequently visited the Las Vegas Strip became common knowledge. The fact that playing the cool, collected person came so easily to Martin was what made this attitude stand out. Many would agree that the Rat Pack was much more than a group of gifted musicians. Others around him began to notice his apparent natural skill. Plus, I'd never seen a more dapper group of men in one place. As a result of sharing this same outlook, the group's already stellar reputation grew even stronger. However, rumors and hushed conversations followed famous people wherever they went, just as they do now. The Rat Pack were the targets of several rumors, some of which might have severely damaged the group's image. While the Rat Pack was together, they created a substantial body of work. They had worked together on several projects, including 20 films and countless songs. However, Dean Martin would reveal details that would alter how many people saw Dean Martin. Despite being an exceptionally handsome man and a fantastic performer, famous vocalist Dean Martin's real face was rarely seen. Without a doubt, Dean's family came first in his life. He has one stepdaughter and 7 biological children from his 3 marriages. Dean Martin, his daughter, has just come forward with some mysteries about her father's background, which support some of the long-standing accusations against her famous father. In 1800, Dean was bestowed the Trobarits title by the famous New York City Friars Club, which is known for its celebrity roasts attended by A-listers. She was questioned about her views on the Me Too movement and how it may affect her father, who was also a club member. The poised, cool man who enchanted the audience was actually her father, according to Deanna. In his family life, he was actually very stern. With a chuckle, she said, he was an Italian father. His response, "These are the rules," is as follows. You rise early, get yourself organized, go directly from school to home, do all of your assignments, and prepare dinner without fail. And with that, it is ended. In the event that you do not choose to conform to their rules, you are free to leave. When I would tell my dad, "Dad, I'm 9," he would respond, "Come on. Rules are rules." It was never our intention to disappoint him. Dean told Fox in 2017 that many people mistake Dean's privacy for his onstage character and humor because of his strong involvement with them. According to Dean's interview with the Los Angeles Times, he would be home for dinner every night. After he returned home from work, he and his mother would share a drink at the bar. He showed thoughtfulness. Despite what everyone had thought, he was anything but that. Dean Martin himself was the most convincing actor to play the role of Dean Martin. It would be unfair to call Dean Martin a womanizer, despite the fact that he was somewhat of a ladies' man. The fact that Dean was a traditionalist at heart distinguished him from fellow Rat Pack members Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra. Dean pretended to be someone else, a man who was essentially a skirt chaser and womanizer. But that was not the case. According to Desert Sun's interview with Patty Gribbo, who was Dean's backup singer and dancer in the 70s and 80s, he was just a sweetheart of a guy. Deana Martin, who followed in her father's footsteps and became a successful singer, actress, and performer, says her father was not a heavy drinker. Having said that, one persistent urban legend regarding Dean has some truth to it. Before he became famous, Deana revealed that her father had a nose operation. Furthermore, he ensured that the anonymous donor who funded the nose-narrowing treatment was reimbursed. Martin said that the man on screen wasn't necessarily her dad. Everything, she claimed, was an illusion. It is known that Dean Martin smoked heavily, drank excessively, and had an affair. The Dean Martin Show did not always present him in a positive light. On the Dean Martin Show, her dad was portrayed as a very sunburned man who fumbled over his lines and always had an old drink on hand. On top of that, he never went back and corrected his mistakes by recording them again. But was Deana's allegation that everything was a performance true? If you ask Joey Bishop, a former member of the Rat Pack, they never got drunk on stage. He continued by saying that the group's image as bad lads was a running joke, which was in agreement with what Martin's daughter had asserted. His daughter claims that in contrast to many other Hollywood stars, Dean never let his fame get the best of him. The carefree singer-songwriter was almost unrecognizable whether he was seeing the Queen or just going to the corner butcher. For what reason did Dean start to fade from sight? Where did his son end up? A turning point in Dean Martin's life came on March 21, 1967, when his son, Dean Paul Martin Jr., died in an airplane crash. At the tender age of 35, the younger Martin was serving as a captain in the Air National Guard when his F-4C Phantom fighter plane went missing while on a routine training flight over desert bombing fields. A 4-day search turned up no signs of the missing airliner. The death of Dean Martin's son profoundly affected him and changed him. The thrill he had experienced in his life had faded. His more reserved demeanor and lack of charisma were on full display in his public performances and appearances. Dean Paul Martin Jr. was a young man of numerous abilities. He flew jet fighters, sang, and played professional tennis. Known as Dino during his teenage years, he was the beloved child of his father. The death of Dino was sorrowful since Dean Martin was very close to all of his children. Dino Paul Crosetti Jr. was born on November 17, 1951, to singer and actor Dean Martin. He is the sixth child of Martin and Martin. Nonetheless, he was the firstborn of Martin and Jean Beeger Martin's second marriage. Little Martin may have been named after his famous father, but he was already eager to make a reputation for himself. The news of Dino's death hit Frank Sinatra especially hard since, 10 years before, he had also lost his mother in an airplane crash in the same region. Sinatra tried to console Dean Martin by offering his assistance, but nothing he did could alleviate Martin's pain and loss. Deana Martin recalled Sinatra's words to her father on the fateful day her brother's plane went missing. Unfortunately, Dean Martin was too down to respond to Sinatra's offer of assistance. As he sat there despondent, he drank scotch, lit a cigarette from another, and stared at the phone, hoping without hope that his child would be found alive. Still, Dean Martin was emotionless enough to remain silent. He sat down with a scotch and a cigarette, hoping without hope that his child would be found alive on the other end of the phone. Shirley MacLaine suggested Shar as one of two psychics to help find the missing plane. To review aerial imagery of the hilly area where the jet had gone missing, Shar accompanied Ricci, the brother of Dean Jr., to the airbase. Shar had already identified the spot with the greatest signals, so they hopped on a rented helicopter and headed there. Near the Little San Gorgonio Mountains, word spread over the radio that Dean Jr.'s SS jet had been found. It was exactly the spot where the psychic Char had pointed. Tragically, the accident crippled Dean Martin, and he never fully recovered. His inability to cope with his son's death gave the impression that he was barely making ends meet. Jerry Vale, Dino's buddy, said in an interview with People magazine after his death that Dean Martin had diminished to a shadow of his former self. Dean Martin tried to keep performing and entertaining, but he was never really passionate about it. Was Dean Martin truly as inebriated as he appeared to be during his appearances on The Carson Show? As a close friend of both Sinatra and Dean Martin, columnist Jim Bacon once observed, "Frank actually spills more alcohol than Dean drinks." According to his daughter Dina, Dean only saw the entire drunken behavior as an act. Whether it was for filming or engagements, when Dean was home, his family would always gather for dinner. His habit of heavy drinking gave him a distinct personality and made his act more amenable to humor. It also gave the impression that he was a vibrant man for his time, which helped him stand out among the many singers. Sinatra idolized him, though, because in truth it was Dean, not Frank, who was the cool kid. When Sinatra wanted to stay up and drink more, Dean would confidently tell him, "No, Frank, I'm going to bed." Frank went to the inauguration, but Dean declined to attend due to his friendship with Sammy Davis, a powerful presidential campaigner who was denied an invitation because his white girlfriend, Mae Britt. Dean's drinking was all an act, a facade he adopted. It seems appropriate for the days of men's clubs and martinis. The joke was straightforward and cemented Dean's image as vivacious. But that was not the case. After the tragic death of his son, the handsome pilot Dean Jr., Dean practically became a recluse. He was consumed by grief, and nobody, not even his friends, seemed to forget him. The number of sightings decreased with time. Despite their reliance on telephone communication, Sinatra and Dean stayed close, and Sinatra never forgot his friend Dean. The legendary singer had his final reunion with Lewis on his 72nd birthday, and he ended his career with a Vegas concert in 1991. Even though surgery might have extended Dean's life, he declined to have it done after receiving his lung cancer diagnosis a year later. Dean Martin, who was 78 years old when he died on Christmas Day 1995, was born. Respiratory failure was the last straw for the Rat Pack member, who had been diagnosed with lung cancer in 1993. Martin was often seen with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and Playboy magazine called him the coolest man who ever lived. The 8-year-old father Martin had emphysema and lung cancer. When the air sacs in the lungs are damaged, the condition is called emphysema. Dyspnea, a chronic cough that is both chronic and chesty, and persistent wheezing are all symptoms of this condition that can affect breathing. A lot of people were sad over the icon's death. A sign of this is the fact that in his honor the lights of the Las Vegas Strip were dimmed. Sadness washed over his close buddy Frank Sinatra upon hearing the news. Not by blood, but by choice, Dean was my brother, and he has been a continuous presence in Sinatra's life, like the oxygen they breathe. In his own words, Martin wanted to be remembered as just a damn good entertainer, nothing out of the ordinary. A gifted entertainer who brought joy and laughter to the crowd. He was a decent man, and I'd like everyone to think that. We loved him because of how well he did his job. Much obliged for your time. Before you leave, hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a video. For further content from us, please click the video that appears next on your screen.